Welcome to another episode of Reseller Evolution. I'm Scott.
And I'm Carl.
And Carl, we're on episode number 20.
Oh, I can't believe it.
What do you think of that?
What do you think of that, hey? I think it's one more than 19. So that's good.
Ooh, that's amazing. One more than 19. I never expected it.
Wow. Yeah, no, 20. It's like I said, I enjoy it every week. It's always fun.
And we're getting like thousands of subscribers every episode. It's crazy.
I know, right? It is crazy. I'm just so happy about it. Hey, I'm happy for every single one we got. We've increased a sub, so that's pretty good.
Yep. And anybody new to the channel, we are here every Friday on Spotify and on YouTube. It is an audio version only on either platform. And we look forward to any comments.
Yeah.
There we go. But every Friday we're uploading a new video. So, and I'm having a lot of fun with this, Carl. Like it's a lot of fun. What do you think?
Oh yeah, no, I enjoy it. Sometimes it's a little eye opening too, for me, that we'll talk about stuff that I never put much thought into. So, example of that is like last weekend was the first community garage sale here in Ottawa, and I actually listened to our 2 episodes on garage sales to kind of just refresh my own knowledge on what I should be doing and try to use that. Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm listening to our old episodes. So, we at least have that.
Yeah. No, for sure. I just find it entertaining. Like I like, and I don't sit here and say, ooh, I like listening to my voice on the radio, but I kind of find it, I look back and I'm like, wow, like I don't remember saying that, or like,
I agree with that guy.
Carl, actually, that was a pretty good comment, Carl. Like, it was kind of funny or whatever, right? So I'm like, I just enjoy going back and listening to it, because even though editing it, you hear it, you're not really hearing it. You're looking for, different things, or sometimes I'm working and I'm listening to it in the background and I'm waiting for like a pause or something, or I have to cut something out. But when I'm driving and listening to it, I'm actually listening to it for the first time, to be honest with you. And I find it kind of fun, right?
I find it fun too. It's like, what I find amusing is when I say things wrong. And it just like, I have no idea I've done that. Like incorrect information or something. It's like, what are you talking about, Carl? Or like other times, like, shut up, Carl. Go on to the subject. Or, Carl, you're not listening to what Scotty's saying here. You're just saying what you want to say. You don't realize you do all these things when you have a normal conversation, right? Because it's not recorded.
Yeah, and sometimes I think, what am I going to say next? Or how do I respond? Or what, blah, 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 blah. And I actually miss some things that you've said. You know what I mean? So I don't answer a question, or I don't really respond to your statement. I'm kind of responding to something before, and I'm like, man, I should have listened to what Carl was saying at that point, but your mind's going back and forth while you're doing it. So hopefully the audience finds it acceptable, but at the same time, I think it kind of does flow well. Like I don't want to like toot our own horn by any means. That's not what I'm doing. There's lots of room for improvement, but at least the basic of it is flowing well. And I think it's listenable. You know what I mean? So
yeah, we're having a conversation. And I think just having a conversation is good in itself, even if we're not giving every single little piece of information, responding to every little tiny bit. I'm hoping it's creating a sense of community a little bit. Yeah. And kind of like familiarity. And I value that as well. And
100% familiarity, things you can relate to as a reseller. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like sitting there and watching poker on TV. Like, that can be really boring if you're not into poker, but sometimes, you know what? I had that situation, or, like, okay, that's how I should have played that, so you can kind of relate to it in an entertaining way, as opposed to, but obviously I think if you're going to listen to us, you're probably into the reselling, or you're probably like some sort of a treasure hunter of some sort, as far as like yard sale warrior or something. But, But I really, I guess, coming back to the beginning of the point, I really enjoy, getting together once a week and just kind of doing the podcast. So I hope other people out there are enjoying it. And I just look forward to the day when we hit 100 subscribers.
Ooh. At this rate, it should be about, I don't know, by episode 60, hopefully.
Well, you know what? I find, and I'll have to go back and check for this week. I haven't done it yet, but Spotify seems to be growing very well. Like,
Okay.
so when I say 100 subscribers, I'm kind of just referring strictly to the YouTube because that's mostly what I'm familiar with. But I think
Yeah.
Spotify is doing pretty decently. So,
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah.
It's nice because it's a separate audience, too.
Separate audience, but the impression rate and everything, it just seems to be like there's a little bit of traction there. But if we ever got like really good traction, I think, I just think maybe it grows a little faster. But we'll see. I mean, we've only been doing it for a few months, right? So it takes time.
Yeah, and I find channels change when they get big, so we don't have that problem.
We don't have that problem. And while we're still a teeny tiny little speck of the big YouTube and Spotify platform, we can still go to the comments, Carl.
Oh, we can, and we can read every single one.
And we're going to read every one. Do you want to start off with the first comment there, Carl?
Sure. If I'm doing it wrong. Carl, stay away from my plates. Tabletop is my niche. Never would I ever buy collector plates until I got a stack for free. Sure, they're basically $10, but I'm already shipping plates day in, day out. Packaging is easy for me. I wouldn't buy them for any real price, but in bulk, but I'll get them if they're almost free. Okay, so yeah, for tabletop, it is interesting category. I think I mentioned before, but Two Dogs Digs, Craig and Rick actually turned me on to plates a bit, and I do look, and it's just another like category to go down when I'm in the thrift store, and honestly, it's pretty quick. It's kind of like clear glass. You can kind of just look over a lot of it without really looking. I think a lot of plates are the same way. You'll notice if there's something special there, as opposed to everything else. We'll have to go through all Doing It's Wrong's niche and just steal them one by one. What else do you say? And I said, this is what I said. I said, well, you can blame Two Dog Digs. They put me on the lookout for plates. And he replied, only kidding. There are more cool and resellable dish patterns than there are resellers willing to ship them. That is so true. There's a lot of categories. There's a lot of value, but people aren't willing to touch it because they don't want to ship it. And sometimes with good reasons too.
He did mention a couple. Are you missing? Are you skipping that comment for a reason? Where he mentioned a couple that do very well for him? Or
no, I didn't. No, I didn't skip it on part.
You don't want our large audience to go up and look for these? These are secretive plates, or what?
Well, I'm scared because like on my live thing, was it Chop Chop? I think mentioned a bolo, and I mentioned in my show after he mentioned chat, and he's like, "Oh, don't tell the secrets." If I was like, "Chop Chop, that you just wrote it down," but I'm not going to tell it here because if you want to listen, you have to figure out Carl the Lazy Reseller and find out where that secret bolo is. I'm just bugging Chop Chop.
Well, I'm going to go back and look for that now.
But he said specifically the best plates I ever sold were Vero Wang Wedgwood Blanc sur Blanc plates. Single settings go for about 120 modern dishes. Yeah, and I think one of my favorite categories I think I mentioned before is the value and the valueless, where you have a category just full of stuff that has no value, but if you're willing to learn the few ones to look out for, you can do really well. There's so many categories like that, and plates are definitely one.
Yeah, I kind of deal with a little bit of the older stuff, but I think there's probably honestly, only because I deal with older stuff. But it looks here like maybe some of the modern plates are more something I should be looking into. Collector plates, I don't even touch that. I don't know. I couldn't even get them for free anymore. I just don't want. They just give me a headache. But it seems like he would pick up free ones if he got them for free.
Yeah, well, even with collector plates, there are some exceptions. Like I know,
Well, if they had a theme like maybe like a Disney or like a cartoon theme, or they had
Yeah.
like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs or something like that, Wizard of Oz, maybe
Wizard
that.
of Oz. I think the Wizard of Oz ones are actually exceptions to that.
Yeah,
Now, don't
because I
quote me
think
on
that
that.
goes to a different person that collects stuff. Like they're
Mm,
collecting Wizard of Oz stuff. They're not collecting
right,
plates. You know what I mean? And
right.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just rambling on because I bought a bunch of train stuff, but train people don't want plates. You know what I mean? Like,
No. Hopefully they want drawings because I picked up a couple at a garage sale this weekend.
well, and they may because they could. I don't know. I guess you could do the same with a plate. Like it's basically a drawing on a plate, but I don't know. Like I have sold. I don't want to get into it too much, but I've sold prints of famous train paintings,
Mm,
and it's all by one artist. And there's like Toronto, there's Ottawa, like there's different train stations, and they date back. Like the imagery dates back to like probably like the early 1900s type thing, right? But just by noticing the conductor's clothing and different things, but um anyway, the prints did well, but there's a lot of train stuff. It's just hard sometimes. I think if you get the price right, give it a shot and see what happens. You know what I mean? For sure. But plates, I will never give that a shot anymore. So
collector plates. Yeah.
collector plates. Yes, with
Like
images of birds on them.
even the old stuff doesn't necessarily value. Like I came across a Blue Flow plate the other day, but it had no value. So
Well,
I think,
sometimes they do though. Like some
sometimes they
can
do.
be okay.
Yeah, I'm just saying this particular one didn't. Like if you're into plates, replacements.com actually has an image search. If you're ever trying to find out the pattern name for something,
Yeah.
it's like Google Lens, so that like you can use their online through your cell phone, and it'll tell you the pattern name. Sometimes that can be quite useful. I've used it for teacups, but it would work for plates too.
So these guys are responding to last week's show. So so next week we'll read the comments for this week's show. But right now we'll go on to Randy, Nova Scotia Celt 5218. Hey guys, one I know I should be picking up but don't is cameras. I actually have it, and that's going to be great for this topic because we're going to discuss cameras on your side of things. So I actually have a shelf full, but can't bring myself to tackle them. I have a remedy for that, Randy. It's have Adam come over and he'll buy them from me. So happy to hear Carl is doing the masterclass in the cameras next week, and that's exactly it. So also interested in the war medals and people. If you are watching, listening to the podcast, please leave a comment. Interaction is fun, and I agree, Randy. Thanks for that comment about that because we do look forward to the comments, and it gives us a little bit of feedback and know what direction to go with the show, and are we doing the right thing, and are people interested? So 100% on that one, Randy. I always look forward to the podcast, and Scott sells stuff Sunday night. Randy, thank you, Randy. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so the other YouTube channel is Scott sells stuff, and that's Sunday night Eastern Standard Time at 8:00. And Carl, you come on there sometimes as a guest too. But I do have a sidekick, Adam, and he's there every Sunday. So
Shipping
sometimes it's just us two, and sometimes we bring in a guest. So.
Yep.
And doing her wrongs here again. Looky. There you go, Carl.
Red soled shoes are Christian. Oh,
so I did have a comment, and I couldn't remember the name of the shoes that I did sell, and that he's 100% correct. That is actually the name. Christian Louboutin.
Sure.
Okay.
With very few exceptions, the red sole is patented, trademarked, and they will go after people. So I think with Veros, maybe some news agencies thought they'd go after Trump for his gold shoes with red soles. You won't see any dress shoes that aren't Louboutin. I think Nike's the only other company I've seen with red soles. Oh, then he has some pronouncing at the end. Louboutin.
Or Ton.
Vuitton.
So not to be confused with Louis Vuitton. So Louboutin. Okay. Louboutin. And they're a Paris a parachute. Like they're from Paris, I think. Like they're so that
Right.
makes sense that it pronounced that way because it's kind of French, Frenchish.
Jeez.
It's a la Frenchish,
Jeez.
but yeah. So yeah, I will look for those shoes all the time, and the Louis Vuitton spelled Louboutin, and you will see that is on the red sole. That is written like
Oh, that's
you
cool.
can't miss it. It's big, bold letters. It's in like a writing font, a handwriting font, but there's a big L, and you can't miss it. The lettering takes up the whole like sole. The whole
Oh
shoe,
wow.
the whole
Okay.
bottom. So, anyways, thanks for the comments, guys. That's great. Like, very happy to see the interaction. As Randy said, it's always fun. So, perfect. But how was your week, Carl? How's things going?
Well, it's pretty good. Like I said, we had the first community garage sale, so I got up. I was up at 7, and I got there for like 7:10. They're that close by, and yeah, it was actually pretty good because there wasn't a ton of people going around to the garage sales for some reason. I don't know why. It was a community one, so there was lots of garage sales, and I picked up quite a few things. No home runs, but lots of good stuff. Like I got a Game Boy for like $5, and with games and Game Genie, I should get like 50 or 60 at least for that. The carved duck, I think I should get 60 or 80 for. I got some statues. Actually, I'm going to show to you later because I'm not sure how to tell if something's bronze or not. And yeah, some arcade games and stuff like that. Yeah, I was pretty happy. But there's one thing you're going to be upset about with me for.
I don't get upset, Carl. What is it?
Well, okay, you're going to teacher say, why did you do this?
Oh.
So for one of the places, there was I got a carved signed duck decoy,
Nice.
right? This is more decorative, right? And it's an older gentleman, and he says, oh, well, if you're into ducks, well, first thing I tried to do is negotiate because he had like $18 on it, and he wouldn't go down because I thought, oh, if he puts $18 on it, he's probably happy with like 15. So I tried to negotiate for 15. It's like, no, 18 is a good enough deal. But then he said, oh, you should come into my house and see my stuff. So I said, okay, well, I'm running around, but yeah, I'll come in a little bit. And he showed me all his carved ducks inside. And these are the signed ducks, worth like $300, $400, $500, $600 each kind of stuff. And he had a house full of antiques. And it's like, oh, wow, this is amazing stuff. And I said, oh, okay, well, I better go because I got to hit all the other garage sales. So then I just left.
Dude, I would have like not even bothered with other yard sales.
What?
Well, it depends. You might have okay, let me rephrase that. So you said he wouldn't budge on the price. Did you ask if he had anything for sale?
No.
Oh, okay. Like, are you willing to part with any of this stuff? Like I have an antique booth and I do antiques. So this is exactly the stuff I'm looking for, but I'm really cautious about the price because blah, 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 blah. Like I've said before, you got rent, you got expenses, all this other kind of stuff, and you need to make a couple bucks on the side. And there might have been some stuff he's willing to part with. He's an older guy?
Yes, definitely older guy. All I was thinking as I was leaving is Scotty's head behind me yelling, Carl, why are you leaving? Carl, you should be making contact with this guy. Carl, you should say, can I come back and maybe buy some stuff off you later? Like opportunity knocking, so obviously being brought into the house without even asking, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't.
100%. I would just have said, here's my name and number. When you're looking to maybe downsize or sell some of the stuff off, give me a call. If you have stuff that's like boxed in an attic or in your garage, like I pick almost anything, but I need to look at it first. But I'm interested in many, many different things.
Yeah.
So if you have stuff that's boxed in the garage and you just want to get rid of it because it's just sitting there, let's take a look at it, right?
I felt awkward. I didn't have any of my business cards with me either, which was another mistake. I just felt like this guy because he didn't know when he brought me in I was a reseller, right? But I told him when I was in, I said, "Oh, I'm a reseller." I said, but I appreciate this stuff. And I talked to him about stuff, decoy ducks I had bought before, and they were signed and stuff like that. But it felt kind of, I don't know, awkward. But
So
it was overall, it was good. I did have the FOMO. Like the first one I came up to, the person had like 7 to 10 Harry Potter Lego boxed sets, and some other obviously reseller was buying all of them. My good friend Tim, he said he got like boxes of records for free when he went, and he was selling them off for good money on the weekend. So there was a bit of FOMO, but I was pretty happy. Kind of got my feet wet. I didn't even send one complaining text to Scotty in the morning. In fact, I said to Scott, "Oh, should I go home now?" And what did you say? You said you're home already.
For me, yeah.
You're home already. So
it was a rough one. Like I could have went to yards. Okay, so let's backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
I the week before had 2 back-to-back days of heavy auction. I got tons of stuff and I'm still dealing with it. So I could have drove an hour away and went to a couple of town wides. There was nothing nearby. And I thought, you know what? I got a lot of stuff. I don't want to spend the whole day buying more and coming back and where I should probably be taking care of this because I have another auction, big auction this weekend. So I thought, you know what? I love to go out, so I cannot not go out. But I thought I'm just going to hit locally here and see what goes on. And there was nothing, dude. Like it was. I bought a box of children's Walt Disney kind of storybooks in a big tote, $20. There's probably 50 in there. I'm going to put $5 on them and I'll put them in the booth. They're easy to deal with for me, but that's all I got. Like there was really nothing else out there.
Yeah.
So it was
I find like if they're not advertised right now as a community garage sale, I probably won't go.
Okay.
Because it's too early a little bit too. Like this was really the first weekend.
This was 100%. Now that being said, out Jamie's way, there was some dealers that went out there and they said it was really good. There was a lot, and I didn't see any listings. There was no community yard sale out there because that's only half an hour away. So I would have probably went that direction if I knew there was a lot there. But it's if I went out there and there was nothing, people would tell me, "Hey, you should have stuck around town because there was a lot of shit."
I know,
right? So it was
greener. Yeah,
it's just so sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. That's all. But in all honesty, I didn't need to buy any more, Carl. Like I got stuff here that I need to deal with. I need to deal with it quick because yard sale season, like you said, is infant stages around here. And once it hits hard, there's going to be a lot of stuff coming in. So I need to clean house right now and get prepared for that. So
I don't know. I see some blank spots behind you on the shelving units. You could just fill that stuff.
Well, because those shelving units shouldn't be there to begin with. That's what So a blank spot means I'm trying to work on it, but it's crazy. I got a lot of stuff, but I got room in the booth too, right? So a lot of things have been selling. Tomorrow I'll be we're closed Monday, Tuesday. So tomorrow, and then I'm doing all this today and a bunch of stuff. So tomorrow I'll be taking a lot of stuff into the booth, and Steph's off, so she's going to help me, which is phenomenal because it's much better with the help. But so that's the way that's what's going on as far as that's concerned. But I do need to make room. Like this auction coming up is going to be fantastic. So,
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, not as good as probably the last week, just because pure volume last week. But I don't know. It's like the condition of the house is just mint. Where a lot of times these hoarders, like everything's dusty and dirty and just kind of boxed. It could be broken, all sorts of different things. But this stuff is like set out like a prized possession. You know what I mean? So
there's hoarder in terms of like I have a lot of good stuff, and there's hoarders in terms of I have garbage and dead cats in my basement. And they both have the same label, and they're not the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. So so that's kind of the week for both of us there. And I'm looking forward to this weekend myself. eBay's been a little bit slower, but again, I made some decent sales. Don't get me wrong. Etsy kind of picked up the last couple of days, which Etsy is like a one sale, and I don't have much listed on there, but under 300. But Etsy is kind of like one of those. I sell something. I sell something once every 3 weeks. I haven't listed on there in probably 6 months. I just kind of have a bunch of stuff in there. Probably more like 3 months for Etsy. I haven't listed, and but I did sell another one of those little miniature things. This is like a music box, and
Yeah.
it's signed by an artist, and it just blows my mind sometimes. But I got $300 for that on Etsy.
This is a doll miniature,
It's
right?
it's a dollhouse
Dollhouse.
miniature.
Yeah.
It's like a it's actually kind of neat, but it's done by an artist and it's signed. And I sold one before for $225, so I
Crazy.
bumped it up to $300 on this one, and they paid for it. But that was the I bought a box of dollhouse stuff for $20 at a yard sale, and there was a lot of miniatures in there that were signed by artists, and I scored huge on that one.
Sweet. That's pretty good. Like on Etsy, I have one whole item.
You
I
have
put
one
it
item?
up. I have one whole item.
Yeah.
And then it's funny, Etsy says, "Oh, this is your top listing." And it's like, yes, that's my only listing.
Well, you know what? That's funny that you say that, but Etsy sent me a message saying we had to take some of your items down. I haven't looked at my email, but they said refer
Oh,
to your email. But I just saw this message last night. But they were saying because it didn't correspond with our or Etsy's listing policy.
oh, weird.
So I'm like, so after the show, I'll talk about that next week. But I don't know
Yeah,
what
curious.
items are there. Like I don't know what they're talking about. Like everything I sell is old, so it couldn't have been too modern. So
That's funny. Like, well, I think we have to look at see exactly what it's about
yeah,
because it's like I've heard with Etsy is like sometimes they're not restrictive enough uh, on stuff that's actually old or actually handmade. But who knows? We'll find out
and they
for
could
next.
be wrong. Maybe I put in a wrong date or something on something, or like I don't even know if that's the case, but maybe they're misunderstood of what the listing really is. Maybe they got some AI in there doing something now, and all of a sudden, because everything's been listed for a long time that I have there, right? So
Yeah, false flags. Yeah.
yeah, so I might have to just kind of like let them know that they're incorrect or something. But I don't even know. Maybe they are correct. I don't know, but
Hmm.
I can't imagine what I did wrong. All right, Carl. So we get on today's show. So today's show is so Carl's going to talk about cameras. I'm going to talk about war memorabilia, probably primarily metals, but maybe you could generalize it really, because I kind of do it all the same way. But we're just going to talk about. I hate to say the word education because I'm always learning about this stuff, and probably the first thing I'm going to say, to be honest, is that I definitely don't know everything about it, but I'm going to explain what I have learned and what I do
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And Carl's going to do the same thing with cameras. So, and in the comments, guys, if you guys say, "Hey, Scott, you're out to lunch. You're totally wrong on this," let me know. I do not take offense. I find it as constructive criticism and I'm learning. Or say, "Hey, you forgot something," or this is also what I do. Like, please let us know if you think we can vet ourselves by reading your comment on maybe how we can improve.
Yeah, because like I'm gonna try my best with cameras. Cameras are difficult because there's lots of different types, lots of things to look out for. Some generalizations I might do, but even I find I'll have to look up stuff too, and I can't. But I'll try and convey the best thing we can do. So, I think we're going to start with how do we source, right? That's the
Yes.
first part.
Yeah. So we just to let the audience know, we will kind of categorize this just for easier, comprehension of what we're doing. So the first topic, source.
So for me, for cameras for sourcing, it feels like the thrift stores have caught on. It used to be that you could find. I'm not saying it's never going to happen, but you used to find single lens reflective cameras, the old silver and black ones, the metal ones, and they would come in the camera bags, and you could find really good cameras that way. But I find they put those behind the counter now, or sometimes they just take them out of the bags and just put the bags. There's lots of empty camera bags out there now, which is very frustrating. For digital cameras, you can still find those, and for 35 millimeters, you can still find those cameras quite a bit. But those old they're called SLRs, single lens reflective ones, the old style film cameras. You won't find those as much. I find, for me, auctions are a really good way to source that stuff. Garage sales can be a good way to source that stuff. Flea markets can be a good way to source that stuff. Because a lot of people don't want to learn about cameras because they're so wide and a little more complicated to understand.
Yeah, and you mentioned yard sales as a place to source, Carl.
Yeah, yard sales is a good source for, especially so right now digital cameras are kind of in. I don't know why, but because it used to be for digital cameras, I wanted ones that were like at least 10 megapixels or more. But I find I can't take that rule as static as I once did, because sometimes even the lower end ones are going for good money. So generally my rule before is like if a digital camera is 10 megapixels or more, I definitely pick it up, especially by someone like from Canon or Sony. Those can be both good.
Okay. So where would you find your cheapest stuff? Like I would assume yard sales.
Yeah, I think yard sales, but it really depends because some people will overvalue, especially they're trying to get really high end money for their cameras because they spend a lot of money on their cameras. But it depends, right? It depends on if they care or not, or maybe it's someone passing on. Like I said, the digital cameras you can get cheap, but you have to be a little careful with that. Well, I'll go into that in the next.
So
topic.
if I go to a yard sale, like this is what I've done a few times. I think I'll start doing a little bit more, especially after going to learn everything I need to know from you today. But one of the things I'm going to start doing is asking if they had old cameras. I've done that before, and a couple of times people have gone inside and brought out like digital recorders, like which are still good too, for different reasons. But I think I'm going to start asking because I think a lot of people don't understand they're collectible, and it's an old point and shoot camera that they think is crap, and they're luckily they have it in a drawer, let alone haven't thrown it out yet. You know what I mean? So it might not even make a yard sale table, let alone find it cheap. It might not even just make it there. So
that's definitely true.
Do you ask if they have any?
No, I don't ask. I don't ask. And that's kind of maybe an awkward thing I just have to get over too, because you're right. So there's the 35 millimeter film cameras, which are the ones that have the film in the back, but
they look like a cheap plastic toy.
They look cheap, but they can be worth hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
Especially Olympus, and the Canon ones can be good. I stay away from Kodak. Generally, I find those don't have any value. I'm sure there's probably one or two model numbers that do, but for me, every time I checked a 35 millimeter Kodak, in fact, Kodak in general, I find generally don't have a lot of value. But you're right.
Because you would think that would be like a brand name, right?
I know.
That's weird.
I tell you, every time I look them up, it's digital cameras or the 35 millimeter film cameras. Yeah, I don't know why. But Olympus, they can be worth hundreds of dollars. But yeah, for sourcing, like that's a good point of asking. I just don't think of it. I just think they have everything out and this is what they want to sell.
Well, the thing is, I remember going to many yard sales and people will drive up in a car and get out. Do you have any? What's that?
Do you have any video games?
Yeah, do you have any video game stuff? Nope. Okay. And then they get in the car and drive on to the next one. And I'm like, hey, maybe you should start doing that with video cameras, right? So
hey, just have a list of things. Okay. Just bring out the list and like, do you have any? yeah.
I'm just doing this as a hobby. However,
that's funny. That's funny. I did do the drive-by though, of the little child staring at you with all their crap toys in front as you drive by your car, and I just put my hand up to the side of my face and didn't look at them and get going. So I've become cold already for the garage sales.
I tip over their lemonade. I just take it and knock it over. So sorry.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
Hey, you got a fly in it. Like I don't want to drink it now. No, but no, I'm just kidding. Steph takes care of the lemonade stands while I shop. But
I find auctions are a pretty good way to get them too, because a lot of people don't want to deal with them, and there's some legitimate reasons why people don't want to deal with cameras, which we'll get into. So It's funny with cameras online. Like sometimes they go super cheap and sometimes they go super expensive, and I don't know why. It's like I picked up $200 for $10, and sometimes it's like I'll see a $50 camera going for $60. So it's like any auction. It's like who happens to look at it. But the nice thing about cameras is almost everyone has one in their house somewhere in a drawer.
So one of the things I'm going to talk about today is the kind of war memorabilia stuff, and where I usually find that is at auctions. I don't really see a lot of it out in yard sales and stuff like that. Some war memorabilia I have seen before, like I've bought it maybe like a bayonet or a helmet or something like that. But a lot
Yeah,
of the war metal stuff probably gets picked up before I get there. But when I go to these auctions, yeah, I really find that I can get them for a very reasonable price, basically because it's a volume thing,
yeah,
and probably because a lot of people just don't know exactly what is there. So what I do is, if I think the price is right based on how many are there, I'm going to, um, you know, learn that way. But I guess my real only way to, like, I'm not going to see this kind of stuff in a thrift store. You know what I mean? Not
no,
without ridiculous prices on it for sure, but I've never seen them in a thrift store. Um, and to be honest with you, that my main sourcing of this stuff, and I've learned a lot by doing it, is through the auctions.
yeah. And I think like every time they come out, they probably come up in groups. It's probably not just going to be one or two.
Well, yeah. So like a helmet might come up by itself,
Right.
but the war metals will definitely come up in groups,
Yeah.
right? So, and you could have American and German and Canadian all in the same group. So, like it's you know, it's it could be in a box or it could be separated and displayed nicely on a cardboard or a board or whatever, or it could just be in a bag. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
right?
And I think
So,
like if you're going to see that stuff, I don't think you see that stuff as much at garage sales because I'm sure at garage sales people, unless they were collectors, probably have some type of nostalgia aspect to it, or it's a family heirloom that they're not going to get rid of. But if it comes up for auction, maybe a family's passed away or a branch of a family's passed away and it's coming up.
yeah, or I guess auctions that I've been going to, mostly it's collectors. So
Yeah.
the person had a collection of this stuff over the years, right? So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, so I mean, we'll get on to more details as we go through the show. But for right now, sourcing, I'm going to say auctions is my best way to get that stuff. But
Sweet.
so that'll just move us on. Like when you go out to buy cameras, like what kind of what are you looking for? Like models or like what are you looking for? What makes you want to buy that camera?
So, like I said, there's lots of different types of cameras, but for the three main types, I pick up SLR, the 35 millimeter, which are the cheap plasticky looking ones, and then the digital cameras. So condition is important and how clean it is important, but it's not the end all be all. Because often for the SLRs, the ones that are either silver and black or sometimes just black, often you can just sell the body and you can get 20 or $30. Now the main ones I look for is basically Minolta and Canon and I'm not sure what else off the top of my head. There's another one as well. But I stay away from like Fuji or like Bell and Noble or something like that. Those ones don't have as much value, and also a lot of the value is going to be in the lens. So the first thing I do, of course, is when I see them, is I check the price because if they're being reasonable, like $10, I'm going to pick it up no matter what. It's when it gets expensive that's when I really want to make sure that the lens is good because often the lens will have issues and they're getting rid of it because of the lens. So but the problem too is with a lot of cameras you can't do all the testing while you're there. So you're taking a bit of a chance. But what I'll do is like if you see so for SLRs, if you see sand in the lens, I'd probably leave that because you can't like if you turn the lens and you hear like the crunching of sand, that's really bad because they've used it on a beach and you can't get rid of that sand once it's in the lens, and then the lens will have no value. So stay away from that. For the 35 millimeters, you really can't test that much. But what I'll make sure is at the front of the 35 millimeter, they have the lens that go together. Just make sure that little lens, automatic lens cover, is like two little flaps that kind of go in front of the lens are working, because often those will break. So you'll have one like that's loose or not even there at all. Check the battery compartment for corrosion. Now, for corrosion, it depends on how much. If there's a lot of corrosion, I'll leave it. But if it's just a little tiny bit, you can clean that up with alcohol, and I'll take them up, especially if it's a good one. For digital cameras, from a Canadian perspective, for everyone, for digital cameras, there's a few aspects. You obviously want the camera. The same thing, you want to make sure the front of the lens cover is okay, but also you want to open it up and you want to see if the original battery is still in the camera. You want to make sure that you want to see if there's an SD card in the camera, and you want to see if it comes with the charger for that battery, because most of the digital cameras are going to be lithium based, and they each have their own little charger just for that battery. And if I'm not saying you walk away if it doesn't have that stuff, I'm just saying it's a pain in the butt. Like if I see a digital camera and it doesn't have the battery, especially in Canada, there's a good chance I might leave it alone, because it's so expensive to get a new battery in Canada. But for the battery chargers, that can also be a problem, where if you can't charge up the camera, you can't test it. Now, often what people will do is buy rechargers off eBay or Amazon or whatever. I'm just saying, every time you are missing one of those pieces, it becomes a much bigger pain to sell that camera. So those are some of the basic things that I'll look out for. Learn your brands, of course. Like I said, like Olympus, Canon, Sony. Those are generally all good. For the old cameras, Canon can be good. Sometimes all the value is actually in the lens, and we'll go into that as well.
Oh, that's cool. Very good. So I guess things that I look for when I'm going to buy this stuff is pretty much is just the price. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So sometimes these metals, like one can be $150 and one can be $10. You know what I mean? So you can either bulk the cheaper ones together and put them online, or like I do is I'll put them in the booth.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's a bunch of medals and badges and stuff there, like hat badges and different things. So it's really difficult at first glance to really know what you have there. I think over time you develop a feel or even a knowledge base of, okay, that's a nice Canadian hat badge. On the back, if you look closely with glasses, which you might not have that option in the auctions, but it'll say the date. It'll say like Burke's 1918 or 14 or something like that. So you know that's World War I era. But you can kind of see on the patina. You look for lugs on the back and a pin that goes through it. That's your hat badge.
What's a lug?
So those are your loops on the back that the pin goes through. So
okay.
Right. So that's how it attaches to your thing. But some people will ask, like, have they been put on there? Are they original, or did someone put them on there? You know what I mean? I usually respond, I don't know. They look original. It's hard to tell. You know what I mean? You can say that kind of stuff. But if you want clearer pictures, but I usually do clear pictures of that so that answers their question. They can just look at the photos. A real professional would know, but to me, it doesn't 100% matter. You know what I mean? Like from my perspective, because you want the front, and you're going to display that as a front piece anyways. So as long as it's there, I think you're okay. But, people I know are going to scream and, this is what I want the comments for. But like, I think as long as you disclose whatever is there, especially through photos, then you'll be okay. I've never had a complaint. So what else do I look for? So I look for the older ones for sure. Like I want, I mean, we're in Canada, so most of the stuff is Canadiana. But World War II, World War One, those seem to be the kind of the more desired.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but there are buttons, and different things that you can get into that can get really complicated. So, what I do is, and I don't want to jump ahead too much, but if you're trying to figure out what you should do with it or how much you should pay, you can do a couple Google lenses, Google lens searches, right? Like pick
Yeah,
out
that
the
was
ones,
well.
say, okay, this looks older. It's got
Yeah.
Canada written on it, or it's got a battalion written on it, or like through a number, or that's on it, like which is right displayed on the front usually. There'll be images, so you can quickly kind of do a Google lens search and then try to find roughly where that value is, because some of them are $10 and some are 150 and some are, there's a lot that are in between. So I guess what I'm doing is I'm kind of looking to see what's all there, where
Yeah.
they're from, but it also, like, without getting too rambly, there's also fakes out there. You know what I
Oh
mean?
no.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's fakes out there. There's reproductions. Iron Cross, the German Iron Cross, is a heavily reproduction one.
Mm.
Um, so I tend to stay away from that. Now we did have a bunch, and I say a bunch, but we had about 5 that were reproductions. We put the word reproduction on them. And like I think they used to give these things out at fairs, like for prizes and stuff. You know what
Oh
I mean?
really?
Like, yeah, that's what
Okay.
I've heard. Like they're easy to come across, but um, if you look at the real one and you look at the fake one looks real until you compare it with the real one, and then you're like, oh, that's obviously a fake. But it can feel heavy, it can feel metal, it can look real, and it could be from maybe the 70s or
Oh, okay.
60s.
Yeah. So it has some
So,
patina on
so it
it.
even looks old,
Yeah.
but it's not World War II. You know what
And
I
they
mean?
don't.
Like
They're not
it's
marked in any way that says that they're reproduction.
they're not saying, "Hey, I'm a
Okay.
reproduction." No, like that's the thing, right? So,
Mm.
but they're designed to very closely resemble it, so you got to be kind of careful. I even bought some that I didn't put online, and they had good values, like $90, $100, $125, but somebody had put lacquer on them. So I
Oh.
didn't want to get in, like, to maybe preserve them or something. They put like a glaze on them.
Oh
And
wow.
it's not heavily, it's just a light glaze, but it shines. It looks like somebody's got syrup on it. Like, obviously it's
Yeah.
dry.
Yeah.
But it's like, now that's not original piece. It's not in its original format. So I put them in the booth and nobody's touched them. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
So I might have too high of a price. I'll have to kind of relook at that. But you just kind of look out for that kind of stuff. Um, but for the most part, because I'm in Canada, I do look for mostly Canadiana and age. But I like the other stuff too, like Cat Badge. I got one from Japan. It's not worth a whole bunch, probably 20, $25. I'll throw it in the
Yeah.
booth. But some of the foreign stuff is very interesting. You know what I mean? So um, I think those are the things that I look for, is probably condition, um, and if is the right patina on there. And some are right and they look really good, like new. So you kind of just have to be the judge quickly, buy it cheap in volume, and then research it from there. Um, but I wouldn't go, like, if I think this is 150, I'm not going to spend $50 on one metal that I think I can flip for 150. You know what I mean? My
No.
goal is same as everything else. Try to get it very cheap, heavy volume, and do my research. And you'll quickly start learning that metals can have some pretty good value and what kind of looks you're going to be going after. It's hard to say it in like by speaking without
Yeah.
showing it. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to articulate it properly, but that's where I am with that.
Sweet.
So I know you kind of mentioned it a little bit, Carl, but we'll kind of maybe go into more detail. But like when you're testing a camera or looking over a camera and you're about to list it, like what kind of things would you be looking for?
Right.
to have keywords or damage things that maybe need to be addressed, but they're not really. It might bring it down 25% in the value, but it's still worth putting it out there. Like, what do you
So
look for, and where do you determine, hey, this is just parts and repair and it's worth that? Like, where do we go with this?
I'll start with the SLR cameras. There's a whole bunch of stuff, and each camera can be different. So YouTube's your friend sometimes for some of these cameras. But I'll go through a quick list of what I check and what people. If you don't look for SLRs, if you don't check this out, you're going to get someone asking you a question. Okay, so one of them is going to be the light. Does the light meter work? Which is basically on a lot of these SLRs, these kind of a lever that shows when you're pointing at the sun or pointing at something light, it'll go up and down. Some of the cameras need a battery at the bottom to check that. If you don't check it, they're going to ask. The other one I check is shutter speed. So for a lot of the cameras, they have different speeds for how quickly the shutter opens. And I'll check that. Put it at the lowest setting. You can have the back of the camera actually open on the film cameras, and you'll see the aperture open and close. And you try different speeds. Just make sure that the speeds are different. You want to make sure that there's a seal at the back. Now, around the cameras, there's this kind of foamy stuff that creates a dark seal. You want to make sure it's actually there. If it's not there, it's not the end of the world. Some people will do that. But if it's all deteriorated, which happens, I'll say that. You want to disclose any bumps. So people will drop their cameras and you'll get a good smack in the side. Just because there's a bump doesn't mean it's the end of the world, but it will affect value. You want to check for the battery compartments at the bottom to see if you can open them. Some of the stuff you can only really check when you have the camera at home, though, right? So for the lens, it's kind of a separate thing. So what you want to make sure is for the aperture lens, you want to make sure it's a nice, smooth, and quick. And so for a lot of the lenses, you have to take it off the camera. Now, each camera can be a little different. You kind of you have to push in a couple of spots and churn it, but you want to check out the lens separately from the body. And often at the back of the camera, the lens, it'll have a little button or a little lever, and it'll open the aperture fully, and you let go. And what you want to make sure is it snaps back, because if it goes slow, then the aperture rings they're oily or whatever, and that is a huge difference to the value of the camera. I don't even know if that can even be fixed, but I have come across ones that are way too slow. You want to make sure that when you turn it, the aperture increases and decreases in size. A little bit of dust. This is the part that's a little hard. So you want to look for dust, but often camera lenses will have dust in them. It's just that the amount of dust. If you see a ton of dust, it's a problem. If you see mold in there, I've rarely seen mold, but you can't have mold and fungus in there. A little bit of scratching is okay. It's major scratches that are bad, because if it's minor scratches, you won't actually see it when you take photos. But you want to disclose that, of course. So I tried to show a picture of it. I've sold so many cameras, and I've had only one problem where I think the aperture speed was a problem, and I didn't catch it. But generally, it's not a problem. You want to make sure that. See, here's another thing. It's like you want to know the mount types at the back, because the mount at the back of the camera of the lens, it has a mount type, and I just look it up. I have a YouTube internet page where it shows me all the different mounts, because people are going to know what type of mount it is, because each lens can have all the same information at the back but have a different mount on the back. You want to make sure there's any bumps on the lens. So all of this stuff that needs testing just for the SLR is why a lot of people don't touch them. But once you learn this stuff, watch them, get some hands-on experience, you can go through all this stuff real quick. And when you can pick up something for $10 and it's worth $200 and it sells, I think it's worth the time to do this. But this is why a lot of people don't go into cameras, right? So that's the major things I think with an SLR. With the 35 millimeters, the pain in the butt is a lot of these cameras use different battery types, and they're not double A's. They're all these weirdo types, and those batteries cost like $25 or $30 each. So what I've done over time is I have a little baggie with all these different types of batteries, and when I sell the 35 millimeter or any camera, I do not send the battery. I say it doesn't come with the battery because the batteries were so much. So if I highly recommend, if you're going to do 35 millimeters, you just bite the bullet, get these $25 batteries because you want to check these things because often they don't come with the battery, and you make yourself a little collection of them. And yes, it is a pain in the butt. You want to make sure there's corrosion. For the 35 millimeters, you want to make sure the lens at the front's fine. You want to make sure that a lot of the 35 millimeters, it has a zoom lens you can move back and forth. You want to make sure that works. And that's it. For no cameras, when I list them, do I actually test them with film. So I actually write that in my thing. This is completely tested, but didn't develop film, and that's not been an issue. There's very few people I think actually go to the expense of developing film for a camera. So for digital cameras, you have the problem of, like I said, it might be missing the lithium battery. The lens cover at the front might be bad. Generally, they're going to work, but really, if you're going to sell it, you kind of need the battery charger. And the other thing with lithium, with those digital cameras, that they have lithium batteries, and you cannot ship those airmail. You have to send those ground. So you have to keep that in mind when you're doing it. Another big issue with the digital cameras is color of the camera can make a huge difference in the value of a camera. So if you have a digital camera that's pink, that can be worth twice as much as the same model, same megapixels, the whole thing that happens to be gray. So you want to keep that in mind too, because sometimes it's worth paying a bit more for that camera when it is pink. Let's see what else. I think that's a lot of it. When it comes to value for the lens, be aware that the speed of the aperture makes a huge difference. And when you're looking at the lens and you're trying to do comps on a lens, you have to pay attention to all of it. And there's a lot of words on there. It's like, is it autofocus? Is it manual focus? Is it 50 millimeters? Is it 35? Is it like a super fast lens or a slow lens? A slow lens is going to have less value. And all these things mount up to a bit of a barrier for people getting into doing cameras. But to me, it's an advantage, because if you can do this stuff, and I can't just spill out everything here on in the show, because a lot of it you have to get a feel and see on, but it's really recommended that you do it, because if I said you can turn those $10 into $200, that gets really addicting really quick.
Yeah, well, that's awesome, Carl. Thank you for that
spew of information. Hopefully everyone's still awake. No, he's not. He's like nodding off on the other end here.
No, not at all. That was good. That was good. Just trying to figure out how I'm going to follow up with that. No. Yeah, so I guess when I kind of refer to that same, testing things, one of the things about the war metals and stuff, it's actually less complicated than that. Like, it's obviously, right, for obvious reasons. And that's one of the things I like about it. So one of the things I will do is kind of look for condition, look for anything that maybe should be mentioned or photographed. But also in very fine print, almost like looking for gold markings on a gold chain. You're going to see imprints of maker marks. You might see some dates, usually on the back. So those things, you might have to take the pin out on a cat badge or something, or and you're going to take a very close photo of that. You're going to have to zoom right in and make it clear so that they can see, and that kind of adds legitimacy to the item itself too. I think one of the other things I do, and you could look for repairs that are incorrect. Now, I've had badges that maybe should have a slider on, so they should slide into position on a uniform or a hat. But somebody has modified it and put a pin, like a pin, so you can pin it on. You know what I mean? So, just kind of look for that. Sometimes it can be in the form of just a glue. You know what I mean? They didn't even solder it on. So, something's wrong there, especially on the older ones. And it doesn't mean it's not worth anything. It just, you have to disclose it, and it's going to be worth a little bit less, right? But it could be something. And I've even had ones where they were broken off, but it's such a rare older piece that it can be still pretty valuable, like $50-$60, right?
Hmm.
So if you're going to look at buttons, maybe you want to look at the maker on the back of that as well. Buttons are a little bit of a trickery thing because sometimes I've sold them for $30-$40, and a lot of times you got to put them in groups of 10 just to get $10. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's so many out there. So war medals itself, I think they're a little. I think the war medals, like cap badges, I'm more comfortable with than war medals, just because I'm always afraid there could be fakes there. So I think one of the things that I would look for is, where did it come from? If it came from a lot of war memorabilia stuff, it's probably more legit. Older ones, but at the same time, there's so many older ones. You know what I mean? There's a lot. There's different infantries, different things. So put those in there. There's Scottish, there's infantry, there's certain battalions from different areas. So a lot of these things can have value for different reasons. And I think it's just something that you're going to have to just learn over time through researching it. You know what I mean? But I think for the most part, you want to look for those little things that could give it a little bit more, like, to avoid questions. They're going to say on the back, does it say made by this day? What date does it have? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because the collector's going to know it should have this. So look for that and put that in your listing. You know what I mean? So you're not like, oh, because that looks very, and I've done this, but it looks amateurish. You're trying to sell something as a professional, and you didn't even list the date and stuff that's clearly on the back, but it could be hidden by the pin. So you look at it, you might see it, but it's under the pin that you just had to pull out, take the photo of it. You know what I mean?
Do you like in your listing? Do you say it's a part of artillery or part of field corps or whatever, medic or
100%? But when you do your searching, it will say that, like, you'll be able to find that.
Oh, right. When you
right,
right,
and definitely put that in your keyword search, because that's going to be important for the searching. But in most parts, the collector's going to know what it is anyways. You know what I mean? But definitely for your keywords, so that people are searching it, you need to put that in your titles and stuff for sure. But so I think I'm just concerned about condition. Is it legit, and has it been modified? So it's definitely not as complicated as a or is it damaged? You know what I mean? Like, I guess they said condition, but sometimes. So, for instance, put it this way: sometimes a medal could look complete, but it's not complete. So maybe it had something over top of the ribbon. So all you're seeing is the ribbon and the medal.
Right.
But on top of it should have been like maybe some letters or a name of a battalion or something. So it's missing a piece on the top. You know what I mean? So don't just think it's complete. There may be, additions to that to make it more, to make it complete. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like for an American ones, for instance, you might have the flag and the medal, but there should be an eagle above the flag, like a metal eagle. You know what I mean? So, kind of look for that kind of stuff. Make sure it is complete. Doesn't mean it's not value. There's no value there. It's not complete, right? So, and there's things too that might not represent military. They could be military related. I think GAR is one. The General Republic Army, or Army Republic of the Republic, something like that. General Army of the Republic, I think is what it stands for. But then there's women. So there's like medals, like, so we're talking Civil War here. But there's women who have been given medals for their help. You know what I mean? So there might be a volunteer medal. It's still got value. It might be worth $50-$60 because it's 1865 and it's Civil War related, that kind of thing. So careful if you're going to list anything with the swastika on it, because they can have a medal and it's there. You might not see it at first glance. You might have to look for it, but it might be under an eagle's claw. You know what I mean? Or somewhere to the side. So you don't want to get in trouble on eBay by listing something like that. So look for that. I would throw that kind of stuff in the booth. Right. But a lot of times there is value there as well. So just little things I look out for. I guess we're on to shipping now, Carl.
Yeah, so for shipping, it's pretty simple. The cameras, I just put lots of bubble wrap it around and around and around and around, and off it goes. I've never had a problem with shipping. Like I said, the only thing is if you're sending the digital cameras, you really want to have a battery included with it, and you have to send it ground. It will get rejected, or who knows what will happen. So that's it. Like shipping is pretty easy for me for cameras. That's one of the nice things is they go in a small little, often like the 35 millimeters, I'll just pop those in a 6x4x4 box and off it goes. So
yeah,
shipping, nice thing about cameras.
Yeah, shipping for me on these metals is pretty straightforward as well. They're very small, and sometimes you might get like 2 or 3 metals sold at the same time, and it's not going to affect the value at all of the cost of the shipping at all.
No.
But yeah, just make sure I present it nicely. I try to put it into like a plastic little Ziploc bag that's not a Ziploc for sandwiches. It's an actual, for displaying coins or whatever. I'll try to put it in something like that. I'll try to make it like, maybe I'll put a cut piece of cardboard that might be the backboard for comic, but I'll cut it to the size so that the metal sits on top of that.
Oh, nice.
In the package. But I want to present it like it's like there's something there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll do that for some things like postcards. I actually have little postcard plastic sleeves.
Yeah,
because people appreciate that, and
I do that for all my magazines too. I'll get a magazine sleeve, and I'll just throw the magazine in there as well.
Yeah,
it's roughly probably 30 cents per sleeve, which over time can sound expensive, but when you're selling something for $30 to $40 as a magazine or whatever, it's really just peanuts, right? So it's just part of the cost. But I think the presentation makes it good when the person receives it. But yeah, shipping these things they're not going to break in shipping. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, camera could break. I've been lucky. I think the only issues I've ever had with shipping or game returns is like the wrong mount type. It's such a pain in the butt, but you really want to especially if you're just selling lens, make sure you're putting the right mount type in, because what you don't want is then getting on the side and saying it doesn't fit my camera, which I've had happen, and then you have to get a return.
Yeah. And you know what? They're fun to deal with, the metals, I find, because I learn a lot. You kind of research history, and I like going down rabbit holes sometimes. Sometimes it's a pain in the ass, but a lot of times you just kind of learn history, and you kind of like learn, especially with Canadiana stuff, because I learn like, wow, like that's a Canadian metal. Like some guy, like one has Vimy on it. You know what I mean? So I'm like you hear all about that, and I'm like, I got a medal. This guy fought in that. He got recognition from that or something. You know what I mean? Or like, so it can be a lot of fun too, right? So
adding a little history to the stuff is fun too. The cameras are pretty neutral, man. It's like,
yeah, but I think cameras can be fun too, right? Because like I don't know nearly what you or Adam know about cameras. Yeah. There's no way. And I say Adam because I sell a lot of my stuff with a little bit of a markup to Adam, and he'll list them. But I find that they're so fun too, because like you could find something that just looks so cheap and everything, and it could be worth over $150. It's insane.
And sometimes cameras will look like, broken, but they're not. Like sometimes, like for like the old SLRs, like you'll turn the film advance knob, right? And then it won't take a picture. And you're like, oh, there's something wrong with this, but it needs a new battery in the bottom, and then it'll go clunk. But some of them do, some of them don't, right? So it's like, I think that puts off a lot of people too. You think it's broken, but often YouTube is your friend. And like, I'll get a weird camera that doesn't, for whatever reason, they didn't follow the standard procedures, and I guarantee there's a YouTube channel showing exactly every aspect of that camera.
Awesome. Well, there's the ending of another show, another episode.
Excellent.
So, any last words? Any last closing remarks, Carl?
I'm sure we've forgotten stuff. I'm sure there's things we could have gone into. Like, it's so hard to go through every single aspect. Because if these subjects were easy, we wouldn't be talking about them, right?
Yeah, and like we don't want to sound like we're reading from a paper that we wrote everything down. So maybe the odd time we'll put in some point forms, but we're really just spewing off at the time what comes to mind at the time.
Yeah.
So there's probably things I've forgotten or I should have mentioned. But for the most part, we're in a conversation about things that come to mind when we're out there in the wild, in the trenches. But no, when we're out there trying to find this stuff, this is just little things, little tidbits that we look for. I'm glad we did the show. I've learned a lot about cameras from you, Carl. So, I look forward to this summer of yard sales, and I can, hey, Carl told me about this. I should.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You never know, right? Like I've definitely figured out. I picked up stuff what you've mentioned in the show on Sunday nights. And went, oh, I remember this thing. Or like, what was it? This weird pleating machine. I remember seeing that on another show, and it's like, yeah, it's great. It's good to have the community. We're always learning. We all have our death piles. I might have a few cameras around here I need listing as well.
Well, and that's another thing with the metals. You can put many in a little box. So
that's nice.
So if you kind of like, it's nice that way. All right, Carl. So what are we going to talk about next week?
We're going to talk about photos and postcards.
I love the old photos, and I look forward to that show.
Yeah, they're easy. I sold some just this week. Some one from an air show. I didn't get a ton of money, but it's great. But yeah, I like postcards. We can talk about that and why we recommend them.
All righty, awesome. All right, so we're here every Friday. New posting on Spotify and on YouTube. It's audio format only. And any last words, Carl?
Tell a friend. Like, if you're on YouTube, like it. And every Friday at 10 a.m.
Hit the subscribe button.
Hit the subscribe button, yes.
On either platform.
Yes,
I don't know. What do you do? A follower on Spotify?
Yeah, I think so. There you go.
All right, buddy. So next week is episode 21. So
awesome. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Have a good week, everybody.
Bye.